stores, before you had Home Depot and Lowe's to put everybody out of business. So you ask me, why isn't there going to be growth? Why is it? Because we have become, I call what's happening slave landia. We're working, it's better than a plantation economy because you don't care about the slaves. They're on their own once they leave after they've done their work. You don't have to take care of them. There's no company store, nothing. You know, you have to feed them, nothing.
Well, not only that, you're not limited to one color. You have every color on the rainbow to work for you.
Exactly. And then you look at, again, you keep going down the list, whether it's the stationery stores. Now, of course, all we have now is, Staples and Office Depot. So what they've done, Mitchell, is they took away all of the laws that were put in place so the robber barons couldn't steal everything between the 19th and 20th century. And, of course, then there was the Glass-Steagall Act, the Banking Act, that was taken out under Clinton. And that was under Robert Rubin, who was the former head of the Goldman Sachs gang, who was the Treasury Secretary. Clinton, to me, is one of the most despicable human beings that hit the planet. And all the Democratic liberal people keep bowing and scraping to the Clintons. This is the guy that NAFTA. Oh, yeah, get rid of those dirty manufacturing jobs. Yeah, you know, before Clinton, I could just do some numbers here. 5 top banks.
Because that will lead us into the TPP, Gerald. You know, that'll be a natural segue to talk about that, which we've discussed on our show before. I really want to hear you talk about that, too.
So before the banking deregulation, Glass-Steagall, the 5 top banks had about 9% of the action in the country. Thanks to Robert Rubin from Goldman Sachs, former CEO, and Clinton gang, now they control over 50% of the action. 5 banks, from 9 to 50. Then they deregulated the communication industry. They used to have laws in place. You couldn't own if you owned a newspaper, you couldn't own a radio station. There was no cumulus. There was no clear channel. It was prohibited. Bill Clinton. Oh, you remember the lovely, every time, it was a wag the dog time. Every time he didn't have sex with that woman, Monica Lewinsky, missiles are flying into foreign countries. Not to forget the sanctions in Iraq and that wonderful clip of Madeleine Albright on 60 Minutes being asked by Leslie Stahl, are the sanctions worth it? Over 500,000 Iraqi children have died because of them. Yes, they were worth it. A mass murder. And, of course, the other wars they started in breaking up the Yugoslavia, who didn't want to become, like the rest of the EU. And one atrocity after another. So, as you keep putting all the pieces together, it's a multinational takeover. And it began under Carter, by the way. I mentioned to you, I used to be, a lobbyist, a government affairs specialist. And in D.C., I was flying all over the world first class. And I remember how everybody that knew that was down in Washington was opposed to Alfred Kahn deregulate, who was the front man for the mafia, for the corporations, deregulating the airline industry. It would turn into garbage, and everybody knew it. So Carter was the guy also that began the banking deregulation as well. But again, he's a wonderful man, peanut farmer. Yeah, wonderful guy. I remember him. By the way, that's when I became a political atheist. When Carter came back on New Year's, after spending New Year's Eve with the Shah and his wife, him and Rosalind, coming back and announcing to the American people that the Shah was the island of stability in the Middle East. That's when I became a political atheist, and that's when I began actually my business, because I realized he was lying and that the Shah was going to fall. And the next thought I had in my mind was, what will the implications be? And I realized that golden oil prices would go up. And I had no idea what I was doing, and I started buying golden oil futures. And that's how I ended up quitting my job and starting my business. So it's one criminal after another.
Yeah.
One criminal president after another.
What gave you the idea that when he came back from visiting the Shah, that the Shah was then going to get deposed? What gave you that inkling?
Because, my interest had always been in current events. So I used to read, and particularly, the work that I did, I'll never forget. I'll never forget 1973. You know, I just began in that element of the business when the oil crisis hit. I'll never forget they said, because I used to represent the chemical industry. All of a sudden, you know, it's the 1973 war, the embargo's going on, you know, the oil crisis. And they, you know, I go to Washington and they send me down. You know, the members say, you got to go down and we've got to get oil. And there's a chemical industry. They need this stuff. And I'm sitting there, and you know, they want me to. I come back and they want me to write a report. And I looked at my boss. I said, I'll write a report. I said, it's going to be a waste of time. I said, nothing's going to happen until they make a deal and they can let oil flow again. But I'll write the report. So going back to 1973, you can see what was going on and where it was going to lead us. And so, I'm sorry, I lost the train of thought. What were we talking about here?
Well, we were talking about now, but I had asked
how did I know about it?
What gave
so anyway, so I'm reading all about what's going on, and I'm in the thick of it. I knew what a brutal dictator the Shah was. I knew how the CIA and the MI6 in the UK overthrew the democratically elected government of Mossadegh in 1953. I knew that, you know, and you know why they overthrew him? He had the nerve to nationalize the oil. He felt the oil was in Iranian land and it should belong to the Iranian people. How dare he?
Isn't that strange? Yeah.
I know.
Very strange.
A commie,
actually, it was BP. It was the earlier iteration of BP that had orchestrated what was then the original Iranian corporation, which was actually British. Yeah.
You got it.
I'm aware of the history. Yeah.
Yep. So I knew this. And I knew what a brutal dictator this guy was. So when I saw people taking to the streets, and I saw this thing growing,